everybody. Welcome to Soulful Smudge Sunday. I realized last week I didn't even smudge at all. At least I don't think I did. Anyway, I'm gonna smudge today. Welcome, everybody. Blessed Sunday. Blessed Sunday. I have had so much stuff going on this last week. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the more work I do with spirit, the more everything else is ramping up, which is really, really exciting. But it's also overwhelming, you know? I find that like this week I needed to rest more. I was really trying to take some time to rest because I think I was so into like the holidays and then the week, from New Year's until the first episode. I was still kind of decompressing, from the holidays. So now this week was kind of like, okay, I'm really like sinking into myself. I feel really good. I had an amazing session with a new client yesterday who is just really powerful. I have another session with a new client tomorrow, and I love all of my clients, but the new ones are super fun because I realize like, cool, here's new warriors who are ready. They're ready. Like they're ready for the medicine. They're ready to bring the medicine out to the people. So that's really exciting. The healer that I met yesterday is like so profound, and I can't wait to see what they do. So today's topic is a restful day is a successful day. Edward and I tend to like work a lot and then like we don't, and then if we aren't working, if we're not out in the wilderness, we get this kind of like, who doesn't guilt or shame themselves. So I wanted to talk about a self-care, guilt-free self-care day. We don't have to, some people don't have any problem with that, but people like myself and Edward, we're kind of workaholics and we like to keep busy. So I was cooking dinner or something, and I said, "Oh, what'd you do?" Oh, because he went away for a few days. He needed a few days just to kind of like breathe. We need that in the big camper. And so I was like, "Oh, so what did you do?" And he's telling me about his day, and he goes, "It was a restful day." And I said, "Well, that's good." And he's like, "Yeah," like almost like it's hard to believe, like, you know. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, a restful day is a successful day, isn't it?" And he's like, "I guess it is." And I said, "I think we need to start thinking about that." And it's interesting because I had all these other things that I wanted to talk about. And maybe they'll come up, I don't know. But when I was sitting in meditation earlier, I just kept hearing that over and over again. So clearly this message is for you guys. Maybe from some, stress or some residual guilt somebody was feeling about this last week, like taking more time for themselves. All of this coulda, woulda, shoulda, and how we should be shooting all over ourselves, it's such a, you know, it really, one of my spirit guys says that they abhor that because it's the overactive imagination. So, hold on. Okay, so one of my spirit guides wants to talk about overactive imagination. They're saying over imagination is a killer, and meaning like, how something will happen and or something will almost happen, or maybe something happened in the background that nobody really saw but you, or maybe you have something that's going on at work or something, and then you'll blow it up. You'll blow up this small thing and you'll stress about it and worry about it and worry about it and worry about it and worry about it. And you're like getting yourself into this stress bubble. They're going ding, 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 ding. Yes, that doesn't even exist, right? Like it doesn't exist. It's in your head. Your head is like, sorry, Michelle and I are talking about this, that you don't want to touch yourself too much when you're on live TV. And I was like, I can't help it. It drives me crazy. But yeah, it's like we have this. He's asked me to back up a little bit. Oh, okay. So he's saying like how it's affecting our psyche because the overactive imagination of things that haven't even happened yet, or things that haven't, or things that it's like the power of the mind, right? Like if we say it, if we speak it, we're putting it into truth. So it's the same with our thoughts. If we're overactive in our thoughts, then we're not actually being grounded and centered and like where we are. Last night I was doing the same thing. I couldn't sleep, and my mind starts going to all these things because I had just watched this program, and then it made me think about this, and then it made me think about that, and before I know it, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, why am I even thinking about that, And we all do it. I mean, right? Like, I don't know. Well, not all of us, I guess, because Edward can go to sleep like that, and I'm like, man, I'm so jealous. Like, I wish I could do that. Sometimes I do, but very rarely. Um, but yeah, so if we have this kind of like overactive imagination, it sends us into this like spiral. So our energy is just chaotic and we can't like really focus. I'm going through this myself. That's why I'm talking about it. It seems like when I'm off the internet for like long periods of time, I am so grounded. I'm so much better. But then I'll go back on, and it's like I try to avoid it, but it's like I don't have an assistant. I don't have, like I'm my own show. Like I have to do everything. And so that's where my mind goes of all the things I have to do. So I can only imagine how it could be, for parents who think about themselves, their job, their work. So we get in this overactive imagination of like kind of stress, and it's just unnecessary. So we need those restful days, and we need to look at them as a successful day, and not that you're being lazy, but that you're taking a day for yourself. There's nothing wrong with taking time for ourselves. That's healthy. It's so healthy. And I'm going to keep talking about self-care and really drilling it into all of us. Um, Hold on. Okay, so one of my spirit guides is telling me to tell you about a story. I forgot about this story actually. Years ago, I used to go, when I lived in Los Angeles, I used to go, I had this friend, Maria, and Maria and she was from Ecuador and I was from Chicago, and I was raised very, like my mom's family was like kind of Southern Baptist Christian, and my dad's family was like kind of like Roman Catholic. And so it was very different. And so growing up, I had a, very interesting view on religion. And my mom, I could always spend the night at somebody's house on Saturday as long as I went to church with them on the next day. She was kind of cool about that. She's like, didn't care as long as I went to church. I can go to the Catholic church, but she would prefer if I went to a Christian church kind of thing. So Maria was raised the same way. Maria was raised Ecuadorian, very Latin, Catholic, hardcore. And so we met at this job we worked at together. And we decided that we were going to start looking into other religions. And it was really, really cool. After researching a lot of different ones, she really got into agape. I went, but it just wasn't my vibe. I wasn't there. It wasn't my scene. But I really loved the SRF in Malibu, the Self-Realization Temple. I loved it because one of my friends who grew up there actually brought me there, and she said, you need to come to this place because it's everything you're talking about. She goes, and she started to tell me a little bit, and she goes, just go, just go. And then she's like, we got to go early because you want to get inside. And I was like, what, And so we go there, and it's this beautiful temple, right? If any of you have ever been, or if you're ever going to Los Angeles, I highly recommend you go to SRF. I believe there's other locations in the world, but that one in Los Angeles is one of my favorite ones, just because it's right on the ocean. It's like up on the hill, so you get the ocean view, and then like it's on these grounds. It has this beautiful pond, and then it has all these little prayer houses. It's very East Asian influence, which I really love. It's worldly influence, but to me, it felt very much more like Asia and India, like that, like part of the world. I should have said Asia. But anyway, so we walk in, and I was like, what is that? And I look, and on the back wall, there's pictures of like every prophet from Jesus to Muhammad, Buddha. It was just really cool. So right away, I was like, what is this place? Like growing up where I did, at that point, I think I was 25 or something. I don't know. And so I was just like blown away that here was this church it didn't have a denomination. She said the coolest part about this church, she goes, is every Sunday it's a different person speaking. And I was like, what? I like never heard that either. Like, growing up with like, pastors, preachers, whatever, priests. It's like I knew of that, but this was like, what you say? What is this place? And so I was so excited because I looked up there and I saw different people, and she was kind of explaining to me who the people were, like the director or whatever. And of course, there's like kind of like a boss or somebody who introduces people, but they don't always speak. And so I see this Buddhist monk. And I was really excited because I was really into Buddhism at the time. So I was like, oh my gosh, what is this place? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? So this Buddhist monk comes up and starts talking about it was an American man, American male, and how he didn't come out of a box like that. That was the first person I was like, what? I didn't understand. I was like, oh, I thought like you had to be from there. Again, you're young, you don't know. And I learned so much that day. It was incredible. I will always, always thank my friend Sarah for that because that was really amazing. Um, and so the guy starts talking about how his journey and how he went to Tibet. And I don't remember exactly the details, and I'll be paraphrasing, obviously, because this was a very long time ago. It's like 22 years ago. And I just remember him saying that when he got there, before he got there, he knew something about himself. And that after he got there, he knew it was time for him to make a significant change. So he stayed there and he became a monk. And I don't remember his name, and I wish I had paid more attention because I know he wrote books because they talked about it. And I believe his book was for sale in the lobby. But it was like that, like those kind of people would come. I mean, I could see like a Deepak Chopra being there or Marianne Williamson or whatever. There's tons of amazing gurus all over the world and prophets. But he said, I had all these things I wanted to tell you guys. He said, but I was called to tell you this story. And it's interesting because this story that he was called to tell us that day is the story that has stuck with me forever. And the greatest thing about SRF is, if I remember correctly, only 200 people fit inside the actual, like, beautiful, like, dome. I know I'm not saying it right, like the temple. But then they have rooms. So that's why she was like, we got to get there. We got to get there. I want you to be for your first time. I want you to be in like the main temple. She said, because it gets so crowded that the overflow goes into other rooms. And then you're watching it on like a big screen. And I was like, that's wild. And I think they even show it outside. Like you could be on the grounds, or I think it's live, like you can hear it out on the grounds. But I'm so glad. I mean, she was absolutely right because I got to get the whole experience from the first time, from the first day. And it was just unbelievable. So he's telling us this story about, growing up an American boy and growing up what it was like to be, now mind you, I was in my 20s, so that was like in the mid 90s or late 90s. So he must have been, if I had to guess, probably in his 30s or 40s. So if I grew up in the 70s, then we're talking he grew up in probably America, 50s, 60s, America. And he was telling this story about what he was raised with, the stress, that things had to be a certain way, and that, for him to be successful, that he needed to live a certain life, or he had to get things done at a certain time and a certain, you know what I mean? Monday through Friday, you go to work, and Saturday and Sunday, you mow the lawn, and Sunday you go to church, and blah, blah, blah. And that just like was not, this like programmed utopian society that wasn't far from utopian. He just did not resonate with. And so he said, he got called to go to Asia, and kind of joked with his family that he may never come back. And it's interesting because for years, like I would say to people, someday I'm going to go to like Tibet or something. I'm going to become a monk, and you're never going to see me again. And I used to say shit like that. So many things, like, I mean, obviously there was hundreds of us there, maybe, I don't know, there might've been 1,000 people for all I know, because the overflow rooms were full, but you know what I mean? But you feel like that message is just for you, even now it's like, you're probably like, oh, I needed to hear this. But that's what we come together as a collective, right? And so the message, we were all there at that time, on that day, at that service, to hear this message from this amazing, powerful healer, this amazing, powerful, leader in the spiritual society culture, as you will. And so he said that every day when he was in the monastery, that they would give them chores. So he explained the whole thing. He did it more eloquently than I will, so I'll just you get the gist. So he goes there, and you abandon everything. You have no attachments, no nothing. You abandon everything. I mean, he was in the full, yogi. I mean, he was amazing. Um, and he said that one of his tasks was to water the flowers. And he was very excited about this task, he said, because he loved nature and he loved flowers and he couldn't wait. And he was like, oh, yeah, he's like, I'm just so excited to do this. So he goes and waters the flowers, and he does, he does his day. He's been there a while now. I don't remember how long he said he'd been there, but he'd been there a while. And then he heard the bell for meditation. So he said when he was watering the flowers right before the bell for meditation, he was in his own meditation. He said he loved that about the watering the flowers, because he would just be, holding the hose and just like, feeling the water and the energy and whatever. So the bell goes off, and, he puts everything away, turns the water off, and he goes into the temple to meditate and pray. He said when you first start out, he goes, you don't get to just sit on a pillow. He said, you have to sit on a chair. And he goes, and not just any chair. He goes, like a really rickety folding chair. He's like that, like if you make one move, if you breathe out of sync, he's like, it creaks. And I was like, wow, that's so fascinating. I'm like, that's so fascinating. And he said he was sitting there and he was really into it. And he was like, I love my life. I love everything. He was just in happiness, in joy. And then all of a sudden he said, this little voice crept in and said, did I turn the water off? Yeah, I turned the water off. Okay. And then he said he went back to his meditation, and he's like, did I though? I don't remember. And he said he couldn't remember because he was like so in the flow of everything that he could not remember. And, water was sacred for them and for anybody, but he couldn't take it. He couldn't take it. So he said after a while, he heard the chair creak, and then he heard it creak again. And then he felt his heart like start beating, and his breath, and he said he just couldn't handle it. And he just like a bolt of lightning, he just like burst out of the meditations. They're like these little meditation houses, kind of like the SRF, he said, kind of like what we had there. And he said he just burst out and he ran to turn the water off. And when he got there, the water was off. He's like, I didn't trust myself. He's like, I didn't trust myself. He's like, because I was so, the irony is that he was so in tune with himself and the energy there and the people and the flow of his work. Like he was so in it. He didn't need to like be like, did I do X, Y, and Z? Did this happen? Did that happen? He wasn't regimented anymore. It was just like a natural progression of who he was. But his muggle, his human, couldn't help it. It couldn't help it because all the programming that he had for, if you don't turn that water off and blah blah blah, and you're wasting water and the electric bill and blah blah blah, like that kind of shit just started, to seep in. And I loved that story, and he told it so much better than I did. And he said so many other things. I mean, we were all in tears. It was an amazing session, and I went and I waited a long time to talk to him because I just wanted to thank him and tell him that I understood. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I have so much to learn from you. And he's like, we all have so much to learn from each other, and we're all going to keep learning all the time. And he goes, and if it's any consolation, now he had been, I think, a monk at that point, like 16 years, and he had a book out and all these things. And he just was very kind, put his hand on my arm in the most loving way. And he looked me in the eyes and he goes, it still creeps in sometimes. And so I was like, oh, okay, good. It's like, and it's just interesting. And I mean, who knows where he is now? That was 20 something years ago. I pray he's still alive and all that. They just said he is. Okay, cool. And who knows, like by now he's probably like some, set guru, but yeah, it's like, it's the interesting, I'm being called to, talk about, I never say this one right. Tea tree oil. Come on, tea tree oil. This one in lavender just called to me. So maybe that's what Spirit wants us to work with. Yes. So lavender and tea tree oil. Right now, I have patchouli and, citrus bliss. Oh, thank you, my sister Jules. I placed, we did an energy exchange for oils. And, can you see it? Citrus bliss. Come on. And she sent this one to me as a present, and it was so sweet. It is unbelievable. Citrus bliss. I can't even explain it. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, guess I'm the storyteller today. Okay, cool. So that was that one story. And the moral of that story is that, we need those restful days, because if we're constantly like, which our goal is to not be like that, right? Our goal is to, I'm hearing smudge, our goal is to find our inner peace, to find our inner light, to find, like I said, that's why I want to do this show every week, because we're going to change every week, because we change all the time, you know? But we need our healing tools to help us. I treasure these times in Big Camper, actually, because it's the time that I really, really get to be quiet. I'm getting ready for, another really jam-packed year full of awesomeness. So, we need to take this time in winter to rest. It's seasonal though. One of my spirit guides just said it really is seasonal though, because speaking of Southern California, when I lived there, I was there for almost a decade, and I was like going batshit, because I was like, oh my God, I'm like, after like how many years of summer, basically, I was like, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm like, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm like, I need to feel warm and cold. Like I needed, for me personally, like I needed my body to like be able to like feel what the seasons feel like, because I'm such an empath. Which actually we're gonna put that story on hold. It'll come back around, and they told me to hold this out to remind me, and I know what it's for. Um, you guys, there is some major stuff. Hold on. Wow, that was really interesting. Okay, they're completely stopping me right now and telling me to take a water break. So everybody take a water break. Okay. Sometimes they flew through me and I get so excited, and I'm just like, okay, even I need to like relax and chill, right? But yesterday I was watching this really cool, I'm really into these Hollywood Reporter interviews right now, or these sessions where they take like six people from the public eye, and they have discussions with them, and it's fascinating. Yesterday was six very powerful directors, and Guillermo del Toro was in there, who I absolutely love. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. He reminds me of my friend Jeff at Hi Ho Gems and Crystals in Tinley Park on Oak Park Avenue. He reminded me of that really powerful, creative, and loving energy. But Angelina Jolie was on there, and it was actually interesting, because I've had this very much like up, like love, not love hate, because I don't know her, but like this very interesting thing with her, because when I was going through my divorce, I was going through my divorce. I like basically all my stuff happened almost the same time Jennifer Aniston stuff happened. So I think I kind of like felt that, so there was a part of me, and my husband was also like in love with somebody else and wanted to be with somebody else, and I was like really heartbroken over that. So I had this kind of like against Angelina Jolie, because I was like, you're a fucking homewrecker. I was really angry, and I was young, I was young. But anyway, but I do know that she is a very highly intelligent woman. I also know she's a beautiful, sensitive being. And one of the things she said that I thought was really powerful was she spoke about music and movies, and how she sits in silence a lot. And I found that fascinating, because if you're an empath like I am, I have I have days where I'll put it on shuffle, and I'll say to spirit, I'll put my Pandora on, and I have, how many stations, and it's commercial free. So I'll say, okay, spirit, I'm going to put it on shuffle, and you play whatever you think I need to hear today, for whatever place I need to go, whatever. Yesterday was like one of those where I ended up like writing and writing and writing, and I really wrote my book. Like it was just it was I wrote in I have so much going on. I have so many. I have like a series of books that are coming, but I wrote one particular book from the series started yesterday, and it was amazing, and it was like flowing out of me, and it was from music. Spirit directed me to go look for this music, and when I found it, it was like I felt like my hands just like went like I couldn't even have control over my hand. Like there was this electricity that was flowing through my body, and it was just coming out. And it was just coming out. And I was like, oh my God. And so it made me think about us as empaths. I was like, it is a struggle sometimes as empaths to not get hung up on the energy around us. So music and television, we have to be really mindful. So with certain music, I'm like, oh, no, 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 I don't want to go there. Or certain TV shows, I'm like, that's too dark. I mean, I can't watch that shit before bed. That's for sure. And I'm getting really particular about that. And then I thought, oh, Angelina Jolie, not you poor thing, but I was like, you bless your heart, like you're an empath. She's an empath. And clearly, I don't go into people's psyche or their space unless I'm invited, but I felt like these when I've been watching these interviews, I feel like I'm getting little glimmers that they're giving us, that they're showing us who they are. And I'm like, and I'm like, we're finding allies everywhere, right? Like we're finding allies everywhere. I've been noticing that on Instagram too, that certain celebrities, like for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm like drawn to them. And then like they're kind of drawn to me, and like they'll like my stuff or comment on something I say on their page, and I'll be like, holy shit. And I'm like, hundreds of comments down, and I'm like, how did they even find my comment, or do they scroll it, just but kind of cool shit, where I'm like, we're all on the same page, and in certain groups and tribes, and we're starting to like be like, okay, this is what's happening, this is how we're waking up. So speaking of being an empath, they want to come back to this story. So this citrus bliss, thank you, Jules. I want to tell you a really cool story. So last summer I read for a couple, and the husband is from Italy. Really powerful archangel. And he's really tall. He's almost 7 feet tall, which makes him even more like he's so amazing. He's got this white hair, and he's just like amazing. He used to be a pro basketball player. He's got an amazing story, and he's married to a beautiful friend of mine. And they're both very prolific healers. And and I always bring, I bring my medicine bag, and I bring my arsenal. And spirit will call me to have certain scents. And I love when I go in my oils, because I'll be called to bring certain oils in my medicine bag, and it's usually between like 10 and 20 oils. It just really depends. And it depends on what I'm doing and where I'm going and how many people I'm going to see. But in this particular occasion, he was telling me a story, and we started talking, and then all of a sudden I heard, grab an oil, and I went into my bag, and it was as if it was like on fire. I could just feel it. My senses were just lit, because wherever two or more gather. So whenever we're, like right now, I can feel the energy of those that are here with me. It's interesting. Last week, it only showed like one or two people or something at the time, but then like I got to go and look at it, and I was like, oh, there was actually 11 people watching it live. There was just two people who were actually interacting. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, I'm like, cool. I mean, I'm always happy if one person, because this message is for somebody, I never know exactly who it's for, but it's, excuse me, it's always, so it's like if I can reach more people, that's why I started doing this, then that's great. Otherwise, every show is going to have its purpose. So anyway, I grabbed this oil, and I didn't even look at it. I just grabbed it, I held it, and I just went, oh, I'm like, yeah, this is a good one. And I handed it to him because they told me to. I hand it over to him. He smells it, and he's like, and he's really smelling it, and he's really smelling it. And then he just like went into this beautiful emotional place. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh, I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was so beautiful to watch. And my friend and I, we just like watched him. And I was like, oh my gosh, like to watch this beautiful, strong, in person, he's like a force, but his energy is a force too. Like you can feel him, you can feel his angel, you can feel his love, you can feel his heart, you can feel him. He's so amazing. But then to watch him have this moment and just completely be vulnerable was the most beautiful thing as a woman in my life growing up in this world, in the world that I grew up in. to watch that. It was profound. And I was like, what a beautiful soul. What a beautiful being. And he just said through tears, he goes, this reminds me of home. And he goes, how did you do that? And it still gets me emotional. It gets me misty because I'm like, well, I didn't do anything. I was like, oh, I'm like, no, it's just this oil, you know. And I got it because I when I was getting into the oils, I was on this group when I was still on Facebook, and one of the people in this group that I was in had a giveaway, and it was this Mother's Day package or whatever, and it was ironic because I'm not a mother, but she was saying like she got it from this Mother's Day thing, but she was doing a free giveaway, and that's what it was. Like she explained like how she got it. And the citrus bliss was in there, and there's all these small things. It was like red mandarin and like kumquat or something, and then the citrus bliss. The other two I could care less about. I was just like, what? Who cares? The citrus bliss I was like addicted to. Like I mean, it was interesting too because there was only so much left, and I heard give it to him, and I was like, no, because it was like my sunshine. Like it was literally my sunshine. Like if I was having a shitty day, it's like, you know, I've orange, lemon, like different citruses I love, but there's something about the blend of the citrus bliss that's just perfection. I can't even explain it for me personally. And so when he said that it reminded him of his childhood, I was like, wow. And he said his childhood in Italy, and he started telling me stories, and then it was cool because of my gifts. I was explaining this to my client yesterday, you know, and I've told you guys this before, that my gifts are so interchanging. They even they surprise me sometimes. I get really excited. I'm like, wow, how much more do I have to learn about myself? But it's really cool. I get things sometimes in words, sometimes in pictures, and sometimes in a movie. And so I got to like watch him, and I just entered into his, because you know, he allowed me to, he invited me, and I went on this thing, and I saw him, and I saw him as a boy, and I saw him in his town in this beautiful place. And, you know, and it's just, it's such a gift to have that kind of connection with something. And that's why our senses are so important. And it's funny, I watched this movie the other day. I don't remember the name of it though. And it was kind of depressing. I actually had a rough time watching it because it was about this woman, this English woman, who, after she had her children, she just didn't want her life anymore. And it was really sad and really depressing. And I thought, my God, there must be so many women like this. There must be so many women. And if you're curious about it, put a comment there if you want to watch the movie. It was Gemma Atherton is the actress. And so maybe if you put that in, I cannot remember the name of it, I'm sorry, but I can come back if somebody's interested. But it was hard for me to watch because there were scenes where, like, there was this one scene, like, I think it was one of the first, in the first like 5 minutes, where her husband, like, the alarm goes off, and he like rolls over, and he basically rapes her. And you know, somebody would say, that's her husband, he's not raping her. I mean, no, he's not raping her, but you can see that she's like, you know, it's not like he revved her up or whatever. And, you know, every woman's different. You know, I'm going to get a little TMI, but it's like, you know, if you're not, you know, lubricated, and you're not like feeling good, you know, if a guy just, if anything, anyone, you know, you don't want something just, you know, that's invasive. And you could see it in her face. And I thought, there may be there in it. And I don't even know if it has anything to do with moms in general, but I'm just saying, like, this was her story. Because I've had that too. I actually had a moment where I got really sad because I remember those times too, in relationships where you're just going through the motions, and it's like programming, and you don't even really want to be with that person, but you're like, okay. And the story is just watching her unravel as you see that she has these revelations day by day that she just doesn't want to live in her life anymore. And it's horrible. It's, my heart like broke for her in like 100 different directions. But what happens is she finds this book. She takes a day. She has a day where she can't breathe. She can't, you know, her husband goes to work. She's had enough of cleaning up after the kids and all this shit. And she just like, you know, she sends her daughter to school, her baby to daycare, and she just goes to London for the day. So clearly she's like living out in the burbs now. She's bored. She's miserable. So it's like, it doesn't matter where you live, London, America, Dubai, it doesn't matter. It's like, if you're miserable, you're miserable. And so she decides to she takes herself to London for the day. And you just see how she lights up when she's in the city, and she like takes herself for coffee, and she takes herself to this bookstore, and she finds this amazing book, The Lady and the Unicorn. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. The tapestries are real. I saw them when I was in Paris. And, if you ever get a chance, go to Paris just for the art. I mean, my gosh, it's like I could have spent days in the Louvre. I spent one day, and I was only in Paris for 4 days at the time. So I only spent one full day in the Louvre because I wanted to go to Père Lachaise and do all these other things. But but the art is amazing. Anyway, so she falls in love with this book, right? And so she falls in love with the story behind the tapestries, which is about the our senses, our five senses, and how there's the sixth sense, which is desire. And it's really amazing. And I feel like I almost want to do a whole show on that at some point because it's like so in depth, and it's already at 34 minutes, and I'm going to try and be good about keeping these to an hour. But it woke something up in her. She woke up, and then she wanted to know more about it. It wasn't just about the artwork. She wanted to know about the artist. She wanted to know about everything. And then she says her husband comes home, and these days she's depressed, and he's like, I don't know what to do for you. I don't know what to do for you. You're so depressed. And she's like, I don't know. And then he comes home one day, and he's in a shitty mood, and she's in this really good mood. And she's like, I had the best day. I went to London today, and I found this book. And she's like really happy. And it's just like watching like how she goes through this. I don't want to say anymore in case you watch the movie. But like she's driven to go to Paris, and I'll leave it at that. Um, and it's about finding ourselves and finding that sixth sense, which is desire. And as an empath, I think we tend to shut down some of our senses because we get sensory overload. So we shut down our senses. And desire is one of those senses that we have dumbed down because society has, made us believe that, or has programmed us to believe that desire is like, it's like the seven deadly sins. It's like sloth or envy, greed, all these things. Yes, there are aspects of the sins that you know what I mean? Like that's like I said, that's like a whole other topic I want to talk about. But the desire thing kind of ties into everything else we were talking about having a restful day and having a successful day, because the desire and this to take care of ourselves is lacking because it's the oxygen mask theory that, I've been telling everybody forever. We all talk about it. My first time was I saw it on Oprah years ago when Dr. Phil asked everybody, the whole audience, he's like, a plane's going down. He's like, I want to ask you all this question. A plane's going down and, or the plane's in turbulence or whatever, I'm paraphrasing. And he's like, and you need the oxygen masks deploy. He's like, who do you put it on first? And he's like, how many of you here would put on your kids first? And of course, everybody's like raising their hand. And he's like, okay, well, you're dead. So how can you save your kids, And they're like, what? And he's like, no. He's like, he goes, how many of you would put it on your husband first? And people are raising their hands. And he's like, okay, still dead. And then he's like, do you not get it? He's like, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. You have to take care of you, because then once you do that, then you can put it on your kids. Those few seconds of you taking care of yourself, then you're still breathing, so that you can put the oxygen mask on your kids and your husband or whoever, you know what I mean? Your husband. Well, actually, no, that's not true. That's not, thank you. One of my spirit guides is like, that's not true. He actually said to put it on your husband first and then your kids, because he's like, without the two of you, he's like, you are a team, you're a unit, you're a family. But if you're a single parent, you know what I mean? So yeah, so that stuck with me for a really long time. And our desire for things, desire is a natural emotion. Envy and desire are not the same thing. I've said this before. I get really, I don't know why, but for some reason when I hear the word jealous, my hair just goes up on my body. Because I think jealousy is such an unwanted and unwarranted emotion for our psyche, because it's coveting something of somebody else's that you don't have. And when we do that, we're automatically putting a negative energy around that thing for somebody else. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, no, if anything, we're like, oh, cool, I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. I've wanted to do that myself. Thanks. That gives me, whatever, to do it myself. It's like, there's so many ways to look at it. But desire is natural. We desire certain things. We maybe it's interesting. it's on my phone and I don't know how to do the small screen, but I ended up writing a bunch of things about it. Maybe I'll go back and write it. But Ed and I, we were talking about that yesterday because I was telling him about it. I was like, I thought that was really fascinating. And he's like, wait, hold on. My spirit guides are like, we'll tell you. Oh, right. So I'm saying, I go, whether it's sexual, and Ed goes, or your heart's desire. And I was like, right, right. So like my mind went there first because in my mind, when I think of desire, I go to sexual. So I don't know if that's programming. I don't know if that's, whatever. Like I'm still like kind of working through that. But it was interesting that Ed's first thing was his heart's desire. And I thought that's really beautiful. Like, yeah, what is our heart's desire? Is our heart's desire to go on an air balloon ride, over the desert? Is our desire to write a book? Is our desire to, get a new crystal? Something that would be good for us? Look at this beautiful selenite. You know, desire, I love this one too. Desire is different for everybody. It's like, what is your desire? What do you want? What do you want? There was this really great meditative, when I first started meditating, I found Deepak Chopra. And one of my favorite ones that he does, I forget the title of it. Maybe it is what do I want? But I've spoke this before to my clients in sessions, where one of the first times I was laying there and I'm listening to this. It was some meditation radio, and Deepak Chopra just happened to come on. That's before I actually put him on my thing. And I just was laying there, and all of a sudden I heard him come on, and he starts talking, and he said, I want you to ask yourself, what do I want? And I was like, okay, what do I want? And he's like, what do I want? And then he started saying it, and he's saying it over and over, and there's music in the background. And now at this point, I was in a really good, like solid meditation. And by like the fourth or fifth time, I was like, okay. And then by like the sixth time, I'm just like, how many times is he going to say it? And then I thought, oh God, is he going to say this the whole fucking time? Seriously, that was my thought. I'm like, is he going to say that the whole time? And then all of a sudden, I started saying it, and then I listened, and then I heard it. And then all of a sudden, I was like, what do I want? And I was like, what do I want? What do I want? And it made me think about it. And I sat up and I was like, okay, this is what I want. And I started to like really write it out. So I'm hearing, so we're going to get some great advice, some homework for this week. Okay. So our mission, should we choose to accept it? I call him Ethan Hunt, those of you who have worked with me, because he always comes in with the mission impossible. And he's saying, our mission, should we choose to accept it? This week, during your meditation, our homework is to write down what we want. Just for this week. Just for this week. It doesn't have to be a life thing. Just for this week. If it's something that'll end up being a lifetime, sure. Also, those of you who have aventurine, I'm hearing we want to work with aventurine this week. Look it up. I think it's Aventurine, aventurine. So this is the crystal, this is the stone that we want to work with this week. And also, one of my clients I spoke with yesterday, we were talking about selenite, how we have selenite all over our house. Find an outlet, look in your town, look around, shop around. Up here in Shelton, or up here in Washington, there's a place called Crystal Cove in Shelton, and I love going there. This selenite tower was $10. Like, it's heavy, it's nice. I mean, that's a crazy good price. It's funny because I had just been in Portland before I bought this, like a few weeks before. And I was in, what's that place on Northwest 23rd? Anyway, it's really overpriced, but that's okay because they have classes and whatever, and their rent is really high in Northwest 23rd. They're good people. But if you want some really good crystals and stones at great prices, go to Ed's in Portland. It's like 77th and like Sandy or something. Ed's Gems and Crystals. Really great place. If you're in Illinois, in Tinley Park, Illinois, Hi-Ho Gems and Crystals. Jeff is amazing. He is a crystal guru. He is a wizard. I am telling you. Go talk to him. It's interesting because I was telling one of my clients yesterday, they were telling me like where they get their stuff, and I said, I have nothing against like spas or places like that are selling crystals and stones and gems. That's great. I mean, wonderful. I said, if it, turns anybody on to, healing tools, I'm all about it. There is a difference between going into a spa when someone's like, hey, this is where, it's like we're real spiritual, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't want to mock it, but you know what I'm talking about. There's like that kind of like, okay, like I'm so spiritual. And like, I got the selenite and I love it. And, I know that kind of makes me sound like a dick, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, if it frustrates me that people deal in things that they don't really know what they're doing. Like I love gems and crystals, but I'm not a dealer. I know how to talk to them. I, have relationships with them. They have names and personalities for me. But I just, and I'm like I said, I'm glad that you can buy them in those places, but it's also frustrating because I feel like people don't really get the education that they need for them. Because I think sometimes people are like at the moment they're in like a euphoria of like maybe getting a massage or they just had a Reiki session or whatever. But it's like if people aren't explaining what the gems and crystals are for or the oils or things like that, then I get a little frustrated. I know I shouldn't be so bratty about it. But anyway, but someone like Jeff, I mean, that's all he does, and he's amazing. And same with like Ed's Gems and Crystals, like that's like their deal. So certain places, it's like if it's like they're doing a lot of different things, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Because it makes me sound judgy, and I don't want to be judgy. I really don't. I really don't want to be judgy. My heart right now, I can one of my spirit guys like, why do you have to be judgy? I'm like, I know. I'm like, but I'm learning, right? I'm still human. I'm getting through it. We gotta let that shit go. I guess I'm just in gratitude that they can find the crystals and gems and stones anywhere. So I think that's it. We talked about a restful day as a successful day. I want to go more into the senses later on as an empath, because I really want to research each imagery for the lady in the unicorn. I'd like to like, I don't know how to, but like maybe I'll do something like with a slideshow with my other phone where I can like, we can like talk about it. Because when I look at the imagery for the lady in the unicorn, they remind me of tarot cards, because it's that Renaissance period. Research it. It's really beautiful. It's a really cool story too. So that's it. I don't think nobody has any questions. I think we only had one person that was possibly interacting. But that's okay. Like I said, we're going to have weeks where people are going to want to interact and they'll be drawn to it. And then we're going to have weeks where we're not. And it's just here for me to like pass on whatever message or homework that we need to focus on for the week. So I said an hour, but I'm like 47 minutes. I gave an hour and 17 minutes last week. So I feel good. So if that's it, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for participating. Please subscribe. That way, you know when I'm going to be having my show. And like I said, every week's going to be different. There may be weeks where I'll be like, the day before, hey, this is the topic we're going to talk about tomorrow if you want to jump on. Yesterday was kind of like maybe because I had such an intense session yesterday. I have another really beautiful, intense session tomorrow with another powerful witch. So, who knows? So I'll leave it at that and have a blessed day. And I love you. That's all I can say.